friends, this morning we're looking at one of the most compelling stories found in the Gospels. It's one that has spoken to so many people, this story of faith and of doubt and of rescue. And it's so powerful when you consider and you can just picture that setting on the boat, the waves, the storm, Christ approaching in the storm on the water, and Peter saying, "Lord, if it's really you, call me out of this boat and let me walk." Powerful moment. We often view this story through the lens of individual faith and doubt, but I think that there's even more to it. So we're going to spend a little bit of time in that moment. And if you know me, I like to explore some of the history and some of the setting of what we're looking at. And what we have to remember when we're reading Matthew's gospel is that this gospel was written 50 or more years after Jesus' ministry. It's written to an audience who are likely Jewish Christians, and it's the second generation of the church. The disciples are probably all gone. There's likely nobody there who had been a witness to Jesus' ministry. They didn't know him personally, but they are carrying on the work that they have received from others. It's a turbulent time in the Roman Empire. Judaism itself is reorganizing after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in the year 70 CE. And they are a community that is very much still trying to figure it out.
All right.
And in that setting, this gospel comes to them. Matthew adds this story that he inherited from the Gospel of Mark, and Matthew brings us more detail. Matthew brings us a new angle on it, because Matthew adds this encounter with Peter. And so this is a very specific choice that we want to pay attention to, because Matthew took Mark's story and said, yeah, but let's talk about what happened with Peter in that moment. So we pay attention, because what we see in the book of Matthew is that throughout, Peter is often a symbolic figure. Peter as a leader, Peter as the rock, Peter is the one who stands in as a symbol for the church itself in these stories. And this is no exception, but it's something that we see throughout Matthew, where Jesus calls him the rock and says, "On this rock I will build my church." When Jesus hands Peter the binding and loosing responsibility, and through Peter gives that responsibility to the church. Peter is somebody that the church, particularly in the second generation of the church, they would understand and see themselves in Peter, and see Peter as representing the entire Christian community in that moment that he's interacting with Jesus. In this way, Peter becomes very much larger than life, and deliberately so. And we take a look at this. Peter, not the individual, but as a stand-in for the church's identity. The original audience saw themselves there. Through Peter, they had been entrusted with the work that Jesus left them. Through Peter, they had been entrusted with carrying forward all that they had received. And so let's read this story and kind of ponder this moment with that lens in mind, with that understanding in mind. Because Peter here, responding to Jesus walking on the water, he steps out of the boat himself to do exactly what Jesus is doing. And that second generation of Christians that would have first received this gospel were a generation that were stepping out in faith. They were offering hope to the chaotic world around them. They were sharing love with each other and welcoming people into community. They were in so many ways a people who were walking on top of the waves. And that world had some very serious waves. The threat of annihilation was very real. But they held hope for Christ's return, even while trying to understand why it hadn't happened yet. These are very uncertain times, and they struggle as Peter struggled. Peter is afraid, and he starts to sink. But Christ is there, reaching out, lifting him up. Peter is not alone, and not left to figure it all out on his own. And that's the message of hope for the church at the end of that first century, beginning of the second century. Yes, you have struggled. Yes, at times you have faltered. Yes, this is frightening and it is difficult. But you are not alone. It may seem that way. The waves may be intimidating, but Christ reaches out. They are not left to drown. The presence of Christ is there to sustain them. In so many ways, we are like that early church who saw themselves in Peter. Here at MCC, we stand on the shoulders of people who stepped out in faith, carrying a message of hope, of acceptance, and of love. The last 55 years have not always been smooth. We have withstood some serious waves, protests and threats and vandalism and arson, but those waves have not overtaken us. We have not only survived, we have flourished. As Christ handed the church the responsibility to continue his work, that first generation handed it to the next, and to the next, and to the next, until we find ourselves here today at MCC Tampa, still carrying on that vital work of sharing the love of God. In these ways, we are like Peter. We step out in faith, out of that boat yet again. We face the waves and uncertainty. We continue to wrestle with opposition, with bigotry, with hatred, with attempts now to strip away our rights, attempts to dehumanize people, attempts to say, no, you're not a real person. They don't care about your rights. I'm terrified as I think of the ongoing efforts right now to repeal Obergefell and take rights back away from us. But that's the world that we live in at this moment. Yeah. There's a very real storm. There are very real waves. There are very real threats. And yet, even as they continue to come for immigrants, even as they continue to come for trans people, even as they continue to attack marriage equality, we will not be overtaken by those waves. Amen. Amen. We will not succumb because even now, Christ reaches out a hand to lift us up and to strengthen us and to give us hope and to say, you are not alone. Amen. Christ keeps us above the waves so that we can continue the work of carrying hope and love for the people around us. And if we are to carry forward this holy responsibility to do the work of Christ, it's our calling to reach out ourselves and to extend a hand in love, to reach out to those who are threatened by the waves and the storm, to the most vulnerable people around us, to the people who are at most risk, the people who are being attacked the most. It is our job, it is our duty, it is our calling to reach out and offer hope and offer love and to be the hand of Christ reaching out in the storm and saying, you are not alone. We're here with you. We're in this together. Friends, we have been handed an incredible legacy. Yes. Some of you here were part of shaping that. Yeah. And you're still part of it. Each of us can be part of continuing this legacy through our love, through our acceptance, our commitment to inclusion and the dignity of all people, we can be present the way that Christ was present for the disciples in the boat in that storm. We can join hands in solidarity the way that Christ took Peter's hand. For 55 years, MCC Tampa has been a beacon of hope and a lifeline for our community. Let's continue to be present. Let's continue to reach out. Let's continue to be the hands of Christ. Let us be love in a world that needs it now more than ever. Amen.